Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today I'm really excited to be unboxing some art supplies from TJ Maxx. I was shopping there the other day since I go like once a week sometimes because I love it, and they usually have some stationery type things, but that day I had noticed that they had a decent amount of art supplies. Now, anyone who ever shops at TJ Maxx knows you can't always expect to find the same products at other locations, or even if you see something and come back for it another day, it could very well be gone forever at that point. So if you live near a TJ Maxx and happen to glance in the stationery aisle and the stars align and you happen to find some of these products, awesome. If not, there are comparable products online or in other stores like Target or Michael's. The point of this video isn't specifically to review these products from TJ Maxx, but just to have some fun and also prove that you don't always have to spend a lot of money on art supplies. Let's jump right in. The first thing is this Mont Marte Watercolor cake set that I got for $7.99. It has 36 colors. I found these exact paints a couple places online, but they're kind of weird websites. They were all for about the same price, except maybe a little bit more. It's funny because there are 36 colors in this set, but on the box it says 38 piece, which at first I thought was a mistake, but I realized they might be including the brush and maybe the mixing pan in the count. I'm not sure. It's a little weird, but I just thought that was funny. So I saw online that the brush that's included is described as nylon, and for what it's worth, it's actually nicer than I thought it was going to be, since most brushes included in kids' watercolor sets are pretty cheap and terrible. The next product is Mont Marte Acrylic paint pen. So it's the same brand that the watercolor set is, and I got them for $12.99, and there's 12 colors. This set I also found online, including on Amazon for $16.99. And Posca paint pens usually go for around $18 for 8 colors. So it's not that much of a great deal, but I did see that there was some Posca pens on sale for like $12.30. So, I mean, I don't know. Technically, these pens are still cheaper than Posca pens, but I'm not sure if they're really comparable in terms of brand. These specific ones have a fine bullet tip, which is 1 millimeter. Each of the pens were individually wrapped in plastic, so I was just opening all of them. These pens are described as acid-free and water-based with opaque, vibrant colors. Just like other acrylic paint pens, they're supposedly great for many different surfaces, including canvas, rocks, pottery, metal, and over the top of watercolor and gouache paintings. I'm excited to try these out on different surfaces. In the past, I've used paint pens to draw on the outside of my sketchbook, which is cool. I am curious to see how these pens will hold up on other surfaces though. They're also really great for adding highlights and details on top of a painting. I was particularly excited about the light turquoise color because it's pretty unique, and that's the one that I'm actually going to be using in this video. I've seen other artists use paint pens to fill in pretty large surfaces on their paper, but when I tried to do that in the past, it did not turn out right, and it tore up the paper and looked pretty streaky and stuff. So I'm not sure if I was just using the wrong kind of paper or somehow doing it wrong, but I'm definitely going to experiment more with this medium. Up next is Paper Poetry color pencils. This is a 12 color set that I got for $9.99. With just a light Google search, I couldn't find this anywhere online, but since there are some 12 sets of Prismacolor pencils that are around the same price or only a couple dollars more than this random set that I found at TJ Maxx, I wouldn't really consider these to be a super good deal necessarily, when you could get color pencils that are considered to be like some of the best for about the same price. Finally is the King Art Twin Tip Brush and Fine Markers that I got for $14.99, and there's 36 colors. I think this set of markers might be the best deal out of everything that I got. I found the same brand, but like watercolor version on Blick.com for $25 for the same amount of colors. So it's already a lot cheaper than that. There are also some marker sets on the King Art website itself, though I couldn't find the exact ones, that are almost double the price of these ones that I got at TJ Maxx. Though I'm just seeing right now that they have a set of 96 that's on clearance, marked down 80% off, so it's $39.99 when it was originally $119.99, which that seems like a really good deal. So I'm gonna add the link in the description in case anybody wants to go get some markers for 80% off. And if you have a shopping problem like me, you might actually be tempted. Okay, so I wanted to start by swatching out all of the supplies so I could get a feel for all the colors and how the products actually work. For the swatches, I used Canson Heritage Cold Press Watercolor paper, which is 100% cotton, so it's pretty nice paper, but it's not super fancy. I briefly considered getting like a notebook or a sketchbook from TJ Maxx to try out the supplies on, because it'd be like, everything in this video is from TJ Maxx, but honestly, working on cheap paper or paper that's not watercolor paper can be a real headache, and I don't think it would have been the best test for these supplies. So I started by swatching all the markers on the watercolor paper, which, as I said, these markers have a brush tip and a fine liner tip. The packaging describes that the brush tip, quote, works like a paintbrush, which is not a totally accurate description. These are brush tips, technically speaking, but they're not as pliable as other brush tips I've used, which is fine. It's just not accurate to compare them to a paintbrush. The packaging also states that these markers are acid-free and water-based, so they're not waterproof, and that they have a, quote, superior blendability. Now, I'll admit off the bat, I'm not a marker artist. I do not use markers. I do not claim to have any marker-specific knowledge or abilities. And that being said, I certainly will not be showcasing any of this alleged blendability in this video, because that's just like kind of out of my wheelhouse. But I'm excited to have this set of markers, and I want to do a little bit more experimenting with making art using markers in the future. So I think this set will be kind of perfect for that, because they were affordable and it has a nice wide range of colors. Next, I swatched the colored pencils, and I will say that they're definitely softer than I expected them to be and kind of creamy, which is nice. As you can see from the swatches, some of the colors are pretty light and some of them are more pigmented. Again, I'm not a colored pencil artist. I tend to use color pencils in my art for two things: the sketch that goes underneath the watercolor painting, and also for adding blush or like line art or little details on top of a watercolor painting, which is how I'm going to be using them in this video. I tried out the acrylic paint pens. So in order to activate a paint pen, you have to shake it and then press the tip into the paper repeatedly until the paint leaks down into the nib. I cut that part out for the most part because it's not riveting content, but I will say that these pens activated rather quickly, which is cool. I used to have a basic set of like Posca paint pens and I didn't really use them that much, so I gave them to my sister. So I was excited to get a new set of paint pens because there are times where I want something opaque for adding bold details on top of a painting, but something that's controlled like a marker, as opposed to using gouache with a paintbrush or something like that. Finally, I swatched out the watercolors and I was impressed right away by the pigmentation of the paints. Even though watercolor is my main medium of choice, I am by no means a watercolor snob. I'm more than happy to use cheap paints because, especially when I'm using it on nice paper, it pretty much works the same in my opinion. Because they are cheap, the paints in this set, and who knows what they're made out of, they did have a bit of a chalky effect, but that doesn't really bother me. There is a good range of colors, though I will say a few of the shades looked suspiciously similar to me, almost as if they just added like a tiny bit of something, like a tiny bit of white to make the one color more slightly lighter version of the other color. Overall, the paint activated pretty quickly with some water and some light scrubbing, and it reacted how I expected to on the paper and blended pretty easily. As a set, these paints have pretty much every color I personally would use to mix different tones for my usual painting style. But like I said, some of the colors are really similar and that kind of seems unnecessary. Also, it includes a white in the set, which, as most watercolor artists would agree, doesn't need to be included because you use water to lighten shades, not white. But I guess taking a step back and reminding myself that this palette is mainly marketed towards children and not artists, it's great that it has a lot of convenience colors because most kids won't be mixing paints to make other colors. So actually, when I opened the paints initially, I noticed that the plastic palette itself is crooked, so it doesn't sit quite flat on my desk and was wobbling, and I thought that that was going to drive me crazy throughout the painting process, but to be honest, I didn't even notice once I got into the zone. Also, I didn't realize until later that I skipped an entire row when I was doing my painting swatches, because I'm a ding-dong. And there was actually a couple colors that ended up being my favorites in that specific row. I also tried out the little brush that was included, and my first impression, like I said, was that it was way less terrible than I expected. It held water pretty well, and it had a bit of a snap to it to hold its shape. However, I noticed after using it a little bit that the bristles were kind of getting messed up and seemed to be falling out, so there's that. Okay, so I ended up doing 2 paintings with these supplies because the first one did not turn out well. I was having art block, first of all, because I got a promotion at work, and as a result, I've been working more hours, and work is taking up more of my brain and energy, which I'm not complaining about because I like my job and all that good stuff. I just haven't had as much creative energy or free time to put towards making art, which is actually why I was really excited when I saw these art supplies in TJ Maxx and got the idea to make this video. It definitely sparked some creative motivation for me. Anyway, I started the first painting that had this kind of Valentine's concept to it, but even the initial sketch itself wasn't my favorite to begin with. Having all these colors of markers and paints, I was feeling kind of overwhelmed, thinking that I needed to incorporate as much color into the painting as I could. So I wanted to do these colorful candy hearts with funny sarcastic sayings on them in order to get as much color in there as possible. I actually did the hair with one of the twin tip markers, which was definitely an experimental move for me and actually turned out not so bad. It just didn't fix the fact that I didn't like the sketch to begin with. But when I returned the next day to keep working on the painting, there was a huge splotch of water right in the middle of her hair. And I have absolutely no idea when or how this happened. But this was just the straw that broke the camel's back, and I just didn't want to continue with the ruined painting that I already wasn't stoked about. So I took a day or two to recharge my creative energy, and luckily got a stroke of motivation and did a sketch that I actually really liked. This time I didn't even start the sketch in Procreate or in my sketchbook as I would normally. I just went straight in with the colored pencil on watercolor paper, which I almost never do. Oh, and also I decided to go with hot pressed watercolor paper instead of the cold press that I used for the swatches, because I thought a little less texture on the paper's surface would be more suitable for the markers, the paint pens, and the colored pencils. So it's the same brand of paper, the Canson Heritage. It's just the hot press version, not the cold press. During the process for my second painting, I convinced myself not to worry about using all of the colors or showcasing all the materials at once, but instead to use the supplies as I would for my normal painting process. So I started with the skin tone in watercolor, which is where I always start. And this kid's watercolor paint really worked great for me. Like I said, I really don't need fancy paints to make art. This whole set was less than $10 and I was able to use it perfectly fine, and there are some brands that just one little pan of paint is $10 or even more. Don't get me wrong, I understand the value in using professional grade paints, especially if you're a professional artist and you sell your work. But I'm just a girl doodling stylized portraits and filming it on my iPhone, so I'm personally pretty excited about just this basic kids watercolor set. I loved this light lavender paint from the set, so I used it for the background to frame the portrait and accentuate the flow of her hair and the tilt of her head. Just blending it out on the edges to give it kind of a soft halo effect. This time around, I decided to just stick to watercolor for the hair, I guess, as an attempt to kind of stay in my comfort zone. And I just gave her this little modern shag look. Painting hair is somewhat of a roadblock for me when it comes to my art process because, to be honest, I'm a little impatient, and in order to paint realistic looking hair, it can be a bit tedious and repetitive, so I end up usually producing something kind of simple and not really impressive because I don't usually put in the time and focus that I should to really pull it off. I also get a little stumped on color choice for hair because it's like, okay, here's another shade of brunette, like 95% of all my other paintings, which is boring. But also, I guess in real world, most humans have some shade of brown hair, I guess. Maybe next time I need to switch it up and do some blue or purple hair or something. Kind of inspired by that light lavender color, I wanted to keep the color palette kind of in that soft pastel area, so I just used one marker and one paint pen. The marker is this light orange color that I used to draw poppies that you'll see later on I'm going to outline with the turquoise paint pen. Then I went in with the fine tipped side of the black marker that came with this set to add the little pupils and some eyelashes. Overall, I did enjoy using the paint pen to draw these little details on the flower design. And from what I can remember, I think it could be comparable to Posca pens. However, I don't necessarily think I have enough experience using Posca pens to really make an accurate comparison. But all I know is that I am excited to have these paint pens and to try out new different things with them. And I definitely was not disappointed by this adorable turquoise color. So if you've made it this far along in the video, I want to say thank you for hanging out with me while I do my little doodles and I tried out these cheap supplies from TJ Maxx. But also thank you for your patience, because I've been struggling with some technical difficulties. My last video, the art vlog that I did, I had a lot of fun making it, but I made the huge mistake of using my AirPods to film, or to record rather, the audio, and it turned out really terrible, and it's the worst quality audio that I've put out into the world. So my boyfriend actually let me borrow, he has this like microphone that I've been using for this video. However, it does have a loose cord connection, so I believe there might be some parts where I inadvertently recorded the audio for this video from my laptop, I believe. If you could tell a difference in quality at different points in the video, I apologize. And I promise I am doing my best to produce better quality videos for you guys, because I really appreciate you hanging out with me, watching my videos, and it's a work in progress. All right, well, I think that's all I have to say, and I'm getting sick of the sound of my own voice. So thanks for watching, and if you like this video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already. Check out my Instagram. It's at TaliaRay_art. And I will see you very soon.